unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Depth, the production of Souls and Liberty. Joining us today to talk about the fecal storm that is going on in Chicago is Jim Ellis from Ellis Insights, our political guru of all sorts, and Arthur Clareau, Souls and Liberty contributor, coming to us from Toronto. Good morning, gentlemen. Jim, let me start with you straight off the bat. I mean, there's almost no way to listen to what's pouring out of that stage without wanting to go throw up. Your thoughts?
It's an astonishing effort. Just to create your own reality is really what they're doing. And the question is, can they get away with this over the long term? We'll find out. I guess we'll find out in November. I'm still waiting to see, once we hit the Labor Day period and the few weeks after that, the election, I think the campaign normalizes and we'll get a better picture of what's happening. But can they sell this fabrication, really, of their own record and of Trump's as well? I mean, everything is his fault and he lies, but they never define that. They never define, well, what specifically are his lies and how did his record ruin the country? And basically they're blaming everything that they created onto him to see if they can get away with it. So it's, want to talk about Orwellian or 1984, remember the George Orwell book? We're here. I mean, it's 40 years later, but we're what he was describing at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Arthur, switch over to you up there in Toronto. I mean, you're looking at this stuff, and I'm thinking to myself, as they're talking, it's amazing to me that there's a few guys they have on CNN who are, either Republican or conservative or whatever, and they're kind of calling BS on what's happening on the stage. Certainly the Republicans are, but CNN had on a Democratic city council member last night, and he said, I don't know how we're going to, to Jim's point, he's going, this kind of isn't actually, all they're talking about is how much Trump sucks. I mean, that's what you're going to sell on? They certainly have the great lie down, don't they, Art?
I think that's the point, right? They built up this range of propaganda over the last several years, and that's gotten to a point where I think anyone who has been paying attention to their side or who follows that side or kind of trusts that opinion, the assumption is so built in now that you can run against this kind of straw man assumption, and they're going to buy it. I really do think they will. Whether independents do, that's another question.
Yeah, the question of the independent vote, that's it's always where that sort of ends up. Jim, back to you for a second. There was this, they did this interview on CNN last night, and I hadn't really thought about it, and I certainly would not have imagined I'd have heard it on CNN, but they've got a Republican, I can't remember his name right now, but he always seems like he just hit the nail on the head. And he said, you guys, Democrats, have controlled the White House for 12 of the last 16 years, and yet somehow everything's Trump's fault. I thought, well, that's an excellent point. And I'm hearing it on CNN. That's a separate story. But, your thoughts about that? I mean, why everything's Trump's fault? And it's just Trump, Trump, Trump. We were talking, we were talking before the show that some young enterprising guy on X went through and counted from the first night. And Trump was mentioned 147 times. The word economy was said 3 times, and the word border was said twice. I mean, it seems like their entire platform here is Trump sucks, and let's kill as many children as we can.
Yeah. Well, and the problem right now is that Trump is playing into that. He needs to get back on message. And I think they're starting to do that and again, go with the contrast of the records, his record versus theirs. It's a very stark difference. I mean, we have a very clear choice, the American people do, on this election. But the battle lines have to be drawn clearly. And that's harder for Trump to do because, as everybody knows, with the censorship going on in the corporate media and the social media, it's harder for him to get his message out, which means he's got to be more disciplined than even in the past. And that's proving to be difficult right now. So he needs to get back.
Give our viewers
where
an
they
example of what you're talking about. Give us an example of like what is he doing that he shouldn't be doing, and what should he be doing?
Well, we need to stop attacking people like Governor Brian Kemp in Georgia. We need to get off of the stealing of the election. That's not what people want to hear. What they want to hear is, what are you going to do for me? This is a mistake that the Republican message unit made, I think, in 2022. And it was all, well, this congressman or this senator voted 98, 99% with Biden. And it was all that kind of really sort of almost what the Democrats are doing now in terms of almost a totally negative campaign without telling people what they were going to do to make the future better. People vote on the future and not on the past. And that's what Trump has to get to. We need to talk about how he's going to clear up the border problem, how they're going to improve the economy. And Gary and Art, the one thing that I have not heard about, and it is major, next year in 2025, remember the Trump tax cuts expire. And unless Congress takes actions to extend them, and if Kamala Harris is the president, there's no way that happens, then we will have the biggest tax increase in American history. And if they come in and do, like she wants to do, another 1.3 trillion in spending, and then shutting down the economy, really with the biggest tax increase in history. And oh, yes, this just favors the rich. But don't forget, people like this new standard deduction, don't they? The larger one. That goes away. And even I was on a panel a few weeks ago with a Democratic congressman from Philadelphia who is the ranking Democrat on the budget committee. And he actually even brought this up. And I fell out of my chair because he was talking about how this would be damaging to the economy if they're not extended. And even he said there are 70 different taxes that will automatically go up. And this is a Democratic congressman from Philadelphia looking like he was concerned about that. And it was really a surprise to me. Brendan Boyle is his name, from Philadelphia, ranking member of the budget committee. And he has the facts. And even he was concerned. The Trump campaign needs to be on that. This is a huge, huge deal. The biggest tax increase in American history if Congress does nothing. Wow. That's what we're looking at. And top with the spending that the other side wants to do if Kamala Harris is elected, this is a recipe for disaster. And that's, I think, where he needs to start going and talk about the contrast of what these two administrations would do and be like based upon the outcome of the November election.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't actually realize that. That's a very useful piece of information. Arthur, what is Donald kind of in his own way here? So you sort of get out of his own way and follow Jim Ellis's advice for the love of country. Come on, man.
That's a great question. I don't know if he's in his way or if his campaign is slightly in his way, or exactly which way it's going. Speculatively, I would have to say, look, recently the last few months, he's really trying to come across, at least, as very moderate, and I can understand why. I think it's because he gets attacked so hard from the left and from the mainstream on being so radical. So he's trying to show he's not. He's just a moderate. He just wants a good economy and he wants to make America great. I think the problem with that is the Democrats are also trying to present themselves as moderate. We saw that last night, right? Or the last couple of nights. They're trying to hide the crazy radicalness that they've been up to for the last for many years. And with their media machine and the way they're doing it, I think they're doing a pretty good job at that. We've seen it, we can see the contrast, but for the average person who maybe doesn't have time to put everything together, I can see how that would work, especially if you just keep repeating and repeating and repeating. And if you had to contrast the two, the person you've heard was this crazy radical for so long versus the people you've heard are the great moderates who just care about you. And those are the two messages. And the other guy saying, no, but I'm moderate. And you get where I'm going with this. You can see how it's a good strategy for the Democrats, maybe not so much for the Republicans. And to Jim's point, I think one of the biggest mistakes a lot of campaigns make is something that corporate marketing doesn't do wrong. They do very well. It's actually connecting the target market with the thing they want.
Right.
And the economy, owning a home, having a job, being able to survive, not having a massive tax hike while you're already struggling is going to be a huge deal. And just as a quick note here, I recently did a road trip through the United States. I mean, we're talking just in gas alone, I was paying something like $1.50 to $2 a gallon less to drive in the United States right now than in Canada, because Canada has done these tax hikes and they're continuing to do them, and it's getting worse and worse. So we're moving into Europe's direction to where energy is going to be so expensive that life is just going to be unaffordable, more so than it already is. And if the United States gets Kamala Harris, you're going the same direction.
Yeah, I'd say, Jim, pick up on that. And also, I mean, not only does Kamala want to raise, a separate set of taxes, like impose new taxes, she wants old tax breaks to go away. So now you get a double taxation. And, these economic policy, I don't know if you call them policies, economic disasters she's putting forward, giving everybody $25,000, whoever qualifies for it, to put down on a new home. What does that do to the housing market? What people are going to add $25,000 to the cost of their house. You want to build 3 million new houses. Well, you can't step into the supply and demand thing like that and, alter it foundationally and not think you're going to have an earthquake.
And that's exactly what's going to come. We're going to have an economic earthquake, and it's going to be a disaster. And that's what the Trump campaign needs to be on, and explain the differences to the two approaches and what is going to happen in 2025.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be on us right immediately in 2025 after this election. And it's going to be a serious problem if Kamala Harris is elected. And so people need to understand their choice going into the election. And it's up to the Trump campaign to make sure they understand the choice, because they're not going to get that from the Democrats, because we're getting kind of a la-la land approach from them that's completely fabricated.
Yeah, it's like a Hollywood movie.
And by that, I mean specifics.
Stage.
I mean, let's talk about just the issues that Kamala Harris has changed her position on from the past 20 years of her life in public life. First of all, let's start with the Biden cover-up, number one, which we can't forget about that, what they did there. They lied to the American people, and I think every U.S. House member and every U.S. senator on the Democratic side is guilty of this as well. They all knew that Biden was incapable, yet they told the American people he was.
And on that point, Jim, let me interrupt you. He is still the sitting president of the United States, and he is for many more months.
Yes.
And he's not functional. They continue to cover it up.
There, you got the Biden
still advancing that lie. If he's not good enough to run, he's not good enough to govern.
Right. She's changed her position on fracking, on Israel. She was pro-Palestinian, and then all of a sudden she comes out for, I'm definitely, we're going to be fully supportive of Israel. Now they're backing off on that. For the single payer on healthcare, meaning no private insurance. She wanted to defund the police. Now she doesn't. And of course, was appointed border czar, which she did nothing but, I wasn't appointed. That wasn't my responsibility. So, excuse me. I mean, it's astonishing that they're being that bold. And we just need to bring things back to the center, if you will. This is real. This is not. And unfortunately, it's up to the Trump campaign to do that, because they're not going to get any help from outside sources in terms of media coverage outside of Fox. But Fox is really preaching to the choir, which is important, but they don't have reach beyond that.
Right.
And that's the main outlet, they and news.
Yeah, it's a massive echo chamber, really. Well, let me pose the same question to you, Jim, that I just posed to Arthur. What is Trump just sort of getting in his own way? Does she and all their barbs and everything get under his skin too much? I know he wants to punch the lights out. I mean, that's quite clear and understandable, but that ain't a way to win the White House.
No, it's not a way to win the White House. And yes, I do think he's getting in his own way, and he needs to correct and right the ship. I mean, right now we've got polling showing that Harris would probably win today. Is this what we're calling a polling sugar high, or is it real? I kind of think it's a sugar high. We will see again after Labor Day when things normalize. I think Trump's big chances are these debates. I guess they now have two. It's hard to keep track of if it's 1, 2, or 3. Apparently now I guess they're going to have 2 debates. Trump needs those. He needs those badly, and he needs to do well. But let me quote one thing. I've got the Obama speech up here on my other computer, and I did want to get into one thing here on this show today. And this comment really struck me when, of course, talking about democracy. This is the party of democracy, supposedly. Again, and there's been no more authoritarian party than they in the Biden administration in American history.
Right.
And he says this: democracy isn't just a bunch of abstract principles and dusty laws. It is the values we live by and the way we treat each other. I wonder if that's what they said to Biden when they removed him from the campaign. This is a party here who has created a coup, a successful one, and forced the candidate who received over 14 million votes. And I thought Biden made a good point about that. 14 million people had voted for him versus 0 for Kamala Harris. And just the way really Vladimir Putin is elected in Russia, the Democrats have done the same thing, yet they're the party of democracy.
Yeah.
They're the party that Joe Biden, who just ignored the Supreme Court ruling on the student loan ruling that the Supreme Court came down, and he said, well, I'm doing it anyway, and does, and really changing law in America through their regulation in the executive branch as opposed to going through Congress. This is democracy. And yet they're the party of democracy. And that needs to be called out and called out loud and clear. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Trump's got to do this on the stage on at least one debate. I don't know why. If he, depends what the rules are, who the moderators are, what they're going to ask, how they're going to try to cover. They obviously didn't try to cover for Biden. They let him kill himself on stage. Not that that required much effort on their part, but nonetheless, they, helped it along. The debates, they're going to have enough intellectual wherewithal to understand that no matter what happens, Trump cannot win or have the appearance of winning in that debate. He can't even hold serve. They have to prevent him from coming across looking like the winner, calling out all these things, which are really, when you think about it, they're pretty bloody easy to call out. I mean, they're just there. He's not going to make anything up. You don't have to make weird connections and connect 15 dots to get to your point. It's just there. Arthur, let me ask you, if she wins, because you're sort of living in Canada under a Harris type, worldview, what can Americans expect when it comes to a Harris presidency based on your experience in Canada?
Well, it's just a shitstorm. Excuse the language. It's a let's put it this way. The first experience I had with this very leftist way of approaching the economy was in Alberta a few years ago when we had a big oil dip. Alberta is a oil economy. And the leftist government that had been in power, just newly elected, decided that with the economic dip, a great way to address that would be to bring in new taxes and higher costs for the everyday person. There's this weird position, it seems, that the left has where they think that rich people are out here somewhere hoarding money like Scrooge McDuck in these big vaults full of gold. And if only they could get access to that, everything would be better. The world is all of a sudden going to be just perfect. And what they don't realize is, for example, if you have a 25% unrealized capital gains tax, do you know what that means? Do you know what that means to the person who has to pay a tax on something they haven't even realized, they haven't even cashed in on yet? You're paying a tax on nothing already after paying taxes on so many other things. And that's just one example. Canada is in that place right now, and they're trying to fix it with mass immigration. They're trying to fix it with even greater taxes and more spending, more government spending and printing. And of course, that's just sending you even further down the wrong road. So it really is a nightmare. And the problem for America is Canada's already there. Europe's already there. Most of the rest of the world is already there. You can see the result. It's not good.
Yeah.
Is that really what you want?
Yeah, let me concentrate for a moment on that idea that, being billionaires and millionaires is bad. There were a few awkward moments last night on that Democratic stage. Bernie Sanders gets up. I don't know how they let him up on the stage, to be honest with you, but he gets up on the stage and he's like, we have to get rid of these billionaires and controlling politics and get their money out of politics. Okay, that's a pretty, easily defendable position, I think you could say. Immediately, like he walked off, and who walked right on? Pritzker, the governor of Illinois. And what does he say? He goes, I'm a real billionaire, and let me tell you how phony Trump is. I'm like, how much more could you? You've got one guy on there damning billionaires being involved in politics, and 30 seconds later at the same podium on the same stage, a dude gets up and goes, I'm a billionaire, and I'm a real good one, and Trump sucks. Really? And, where do you go with this sort of thing, Art? I mean, I'm throw that to you. And then Jim, I know you got a thought on that, so we'll hear your thought too. But Art, I mean, come on. I mean, it was hypocrisy, stupidity. They don't care. They just can stand up on stage and contradict each other. Michelle Obama, my mother said that, it's not good to have extra money. The Obamas have 4 homes. They're worth about $70 million. Can people really be this stupid to listen to them damning everything that they possess?
Right.
Well, yeah, look, it's a lineup of millionaires and billionaires talking about how evil the rich are and how we're going to eat the rich, which I think goes to show that the intention is not at all to eat the rich. This is a line that they know works. They're just feeding the people who want to hear it the thing they want to hear. Yeah. And one very libertarian perspective on this is that it is the big corporations, it is wealthy individuals who like to use government to regulate out their competition. And I think that's more like what we're going to be seeing from them. Yeah. It's this kind of really corrupt, or the way that Marxists and communists always end up being. They don't actually end up being communists. They end up being capitalist with communist a buffer between them and the normal people.
Right.
And that's what I think this is. These people have no intention of giving away their money. They're going to find a way that they're not going to be paying these taxes. This is to make sure that there is no upcoming self-made threat to their power. I mean, look, Elon Musk's a threat to their power, right? Peter Thiel's a threat to their power. These guys are more or less self-made billionaires. I mean, these guys have done a lot of good for the world. That's what they don't want. They want people who are in the network, who are in the group. Those guys can be rich. Those guys can reap the benefits of wealth. Everyone else, stay where you are. Do not come closer.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Let me phrase the question, the same topic to you, Jim, but phrase it this way. If a bunch of, smart, talented, gifted individuals climb to the level of multi-billionaires and they help improve the common lot, at least economically, and so I have a job that probably pays more than if I was under communism and all this, why do I care if somebody's a multi-zillionaire as long as I have, a good income, I'm able to, afford the things in life that I want, materially speaking. Right. We're not talking spiritually. Why do I care if somebody's a multi-billionaire? But really, honest to God, why do I care? Good. You guys worked hard. You got your money. I've got, 2 cars in my garage and, 3 chickens in every pot. Why do I care?
Well, the free enterprise system. And that's what the Democrats really would like to eliminate, because they like the system. And Art was correct on how they view things. And Bernie Sanders has 3 homes too, by the way, Mr. Anti-billionaire millionaire. I mean, that's what he is, a millionaire. Through all his socialist public service, and he's a millionaire now? How did that happen?
Right.
But anyway, it is really kind of designed to who controls. And the reason the Democrats don't like the free enterprise system is who's at the top of the chain in the free enterprise system? Well, Gary, it was the people you described.
Right.
The people that have succeeded over the years, accumulated wealth, and they're really at sort of the top of the pyramid, if you will. Who's at the top of the pyramid in more of a socialist system? The government.
Right.
The government employees, the government officials. In other words, themselves. And that's why they're doing what they're doing, because the system they advocate empowers and favors them personally,
Right.
not the American people, and certainly not the free enterprise system. And that's why they attack what they call the rich people, who a lot of them support Harris, by the way.
Yeah.
And most of these big companies support Harris. But again, we can attack them because, as Art said, it's good play for the average voter, because they've got to get through this election. And they are very close to implementing everything they have ever wanted to do.
Yeah, they're very close. It's frighteningly close. I was going to just ask for final thoughts here. Go ahead, Art.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to add one thing real quick to what Jim was saying. There is a growing wealth inequality in the United States. I know the left likes to use that term a lot, inequality. But there is a growing wealth inequality in the United States, and it is a problem. And there are people who are struggling. And it's directly connected to a lot of the left's policies, whether it's money printing, inflation, just robbing you, whether it's high taxes, whether it's, mass immigration, illegal immigration, all that stuff has an effect. Everything that's being done has effect. Sanctuary cities, $450 billion to house illegals. All of these things matter in the broad picture. And I think that's why they have to play this game, or that's why they play this game, because people are genuinely concerned and they're hoping that someone's going to come along and fix the problems. But for the left, by pointing at Elon Musk and saying, hey, that guy over there, that's the problem, that's how they're able to try to herd people back into continuing these same destructive policies.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thanks very much, Arthur. Jim, final thoughts on all of this? We still have 2 more nights of the fecal storm to go from Chicago.
We can't wait for Kamala's speech. So it's again, they're trying to create a different reality than reality, a new reality, if you will, a fabricated reality. And the question I've always asked since they started trying this, particularly with removing Biden from his the position he won, which was renomination. There's no doubt he won that, and they forced him out. And it was really the people that Bernie Sanders attacked, I think, at the end of the day, who were cutting off the money to the campaign and said, unless things change, we're going to not be there for you. And so therefore, that's really what forced them out. That's what they understand, the money.
Yeah.
And so therefore, Biden gets out, and then the elite of the Democratic Party comes in and says, no, you're going to have Kamala and you're going to vote for her, period. And that's really what they've done. And then we're going to create a new Kamala. And we're going to keep her away from the media, and we're going to change all her positions. And then, we'll go back to the way we were once we win.
Right.
So it's all about this winning. But the Republicans need to counter this. It's got to be up to them. They're not going to get any help from the mainstream, if you will, corporate elite media. And we've got an interesting 75 days ahead of us, that's for sure. Yeah. And it's really more like 65 or 55, because remember, most of the states, almost all of them now, have some form of early voting. And so by the middle of October, people are going to be starting to vote in mass. And so it's much less of a campaign cycle now than we used to have.
Sure. Yeah. It's elongated, but there's less of it, which seems counterintuitive. All right, guys. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. We'll have you back on, obviously, for many more. There's many more things as this whole election unfolds. Just wrapping up here with a little final thought: the Democrats and children. You don't even know where to begin. Let me try to begin. 25 children lost their lives at the Democratic National Convention the first 2 days of it. That abortion van, Planned Parenthood van, parked out in the alley, just a block away from the actual convention center. 25 children were aborted in that van. It's filthy, disgusting, demonic, satanic. Joe Biden stood up on the stage during his speech. You're not sure which line to pick out, that he was screaming, "Scream this, scream that." He said 1,300 children die every day in America, die every year in America from guns. It's guns is the leading killer child. No, Joe. No, almost 1,300 children die a day under your rule and your party's rule through abortion. 25 of them died in the back alley. Talk about a back alley abortion. There it is. except this time you have a van for it. And when news broke that the Biden administration, we'll just say, lost 300,000 children in this whole massive migration, illegal immigration wave. 300,000 children, Department of Homeland Security is reporting that, are simply unaccounted for. A third of a million children, with all those 10 million, 20 million, whatever it was, the number of people that came over the border, have been flown over on planes by Biden from Venezuela, put up in hotels a little bit. 300,000 children. No idea where they are. This party is satanic. They hate children. From before birth to after birth, they hate children. Anybody who votes for this party is going to have to stand in front of God and give an account for that. And you know what? You don't want anybody to go to hell. But if you don't love your neighbor, even in the form of a small child, because you know there is no way in hell that some of those 300,000 children are not right this minute being sexually abused by some perverts. And the Democratic Party is simply fine with that. If they can't kill them, well, that's all right if we abuse them. That's it for today. I'm Gary Michael Voris. God love you.